Okay, my bad, guys. I'm an idiot. Forgot to switch out the audio. That is on me. But we're good to go. We're ready to roll. Here we are. Early show tonight, so thank you for accommodating me on that. I'm about to go. About to watch a little comedy tonight. Some Taylor Tomlinson in town, so I'm excited for that. But anyway, wanted to make sure I still got you a show because we have a ton going on. I mean, most of this tonight is going to be about the Pac-12 because there seems to be a groundswell of momentum within Pac-12 country, the Pac-12 propaganda machine. Jon Wilner recently wrote a piece about the comments we've seen from presidents in the Pac-12 here over the last week or so, with his thought that if you add up what is being said in those comments, that a deal is close for the Pac-12. And it does seem like many people are starting to feel like it's moving in that direction. So we'll break that down. We'll break down how realistic that actually is. Can the Pac-12 be trusted? Basically, at this point in time, I think is the question to ask there. And well, I trust Wilner, and I think Wilner is certainly a better resource than John Canzano in all of this. I do think there's a little bit of just breezing right on past some of the issues that the Pac-12 has had in terms of like messing up the timeline, the presidents not being on the same page with Kliavkov, that there probably is a level of skepticism that is warranted right now with them feeling like there is a big push of momentum here at the moment. But we had the Colorado board meeting get whacked on Friday. That didn't actually happen. So maybe you could take that as a sign that things are not moving as much in that direction as they once were. Colorado to the Big 12. Who knows? But anyway, that will form the basis of a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Washington and Washington State are in financial trouble. That's another piece of this that is putting a lot more pressure on the Pac-12. So we can break down the numbers there and what is going on there. But beyond that, man, I mean, stuff that could have been the major part of a lot of these videos. One, Jon Wilner did basically admit the Colorado smoke is real, which, you know, for a lot of the deniers out in Pac-12 country, I would think that is something that should be blasted through a megaphone to them. He said, look, it is legit that Colorado has been talking to the Big 12. We've got Greg Sankey going after Brett Yormark, which is that's a whole show in and of itself. That's a whole different can of worms. The fact that Greg Sankey is going after Brett Yormark for the way he's operating after Sankey has been the one that kicked this whole round of realignment off, obviously, in July of 2021. The Big 12 is going to have a bowl game in Mexico. And how about this? After rumors that Brett Yormark had snuck into Memphis for an official meeting, Brett Yormark officially shut that down. Now, again, how much skepticism should be there and how much is being said publicly versus what's actually happening privately. Like there are reasonable discussions to be had there, and we will try to get to that and have them. If not, may try to do a little standalone video content for you with that because I think it is of major importance. But there is a lot happening, long story short, and that has happened here over the last 3 or 4 days. So we are going to cover it all here on the show. I see someone asking, who is Greg Sankey? Greg Sankey is the SEC commissioner. He is the SEC commissioner and came after our prince, our king, Brett Yormark. But of course, our queen is Karen from Endeavor. So thank you. All hail, Lord Karen. All hail. As you guys know, if you've been here before, this is how it works on the show. You can be a part of the show here tonight. You can control the content, make your voice heard, and at the same time support what it is that I'm doing here, bringing you Big 12 content and conference realignment content on a weekly basis. You can do so by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. There are 125 people in the chat here tonight. I can't keep up with everything that's going on there. So the way to get your comment on the show tonight is to click the $ below the chat box where it says say something, to leave your donation, support the work that I'm doing, giving you Big 12 and conference realignment content on this channel, and make your voice heard and control some of the content here tonight. A totally free way that you can support the channel as well is just to simply give me one click, just one click. It's just a like. Just like that video. That helps me out. We've got 131 people in here, only 23 likes on the video. Make sure we pump those numbers up, baby. Just give me one click. Just like the video. I'd appreciate it a ton. Also, if you leave a comment in the comment section of the video, whether it's before, during, or after, I would appreciate that also. Even if it's you telling me that I suck and you hate me and I've got terrible takes and opinions, all that stuff helps. So let's fuel that algorithm, people. Fuel the algo. That is a very free way for you to help support the channel as well. If you are catching up to this after the fact, you're not able to be here live with us on the show, you can donate as well and support the channel on Venmo. It is just John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you would like to support the channel that way as well. And I think that is all I have in the way of housekeeping here before we get started. Michael, what's up, Michael? Thank you for being here as always, my friend. I appreciate you. Michael says, back from a cruise. Thanks for the catch-up videos. Hey, there we go. All right, Michael. Congratulations on getting away for what sounds like a great vacay there. I've never been on a cruise in my life. Have always been kind of intrigued by that. Never have actually experienced it. So glad that you were able to do so. Glad that you're back here, and hope that you enjoy the show here tonight and you feel all caught up and everything back in sync. Okay. I want to start actually Jon Wilner's piece, where he is basically stating that the way he's reading the tea leaves would indicate that the Pac-12 is getting close to having this deal finalized. It's all based on comments that were made predominantly by Kirk Schulz, Washington State's president, who was being filmed in a setting with the board there. And he had a lot of very interesting comments about what is going on, some pretty brutally honest at times comments about what is going on financially with the Pac-12 and the Pac-12 situation and the TV deal and all of that. So let me read you some of the highlights from Kirk Schulz, Washington State president. He is on kind of the executive inner circle that the Pac-12 has. He is somebody that's been very heavily involved within Pac-12 and college football circles for a long time right now. And at one point in time was the president at K-State when conference realignment was going on in like 2010, 2011. So he does have quite a bit of experience there. The other thing you have to always remember, though, that I will caution you with here is that his school is in as bad a position as any in the Pac-12 if things were to falter. So he has more at stake and more reason to have you believing that positive things are happening as far as Washington State and the Pac-12 are concerned. But here's what Kirk Schulz said. I'm taking these remarks from Twitter where people have been tweeting about all this. Washington State President Kirk Schulz says a new Pac-12 revenue deal is probably coming in the next 2 weeks, adding some certainty to the numbers they're presenting today to the regions. So there's a part of it. I guess I had forgotten, honestly, until getting back into these notes, that it had been that specifically laid out by Kirk Schulz. But Kirk Schulz says it's coming in the next 2 weeks. So you know where I'm going to start with all of this, guys. We know how these timestamps have worked out for the presidents in the past, and it has been a freaking disaster. It has not been good at all. In fact, let me see if I can pull this up. There was a hero out there on Twitter who put together a list of all of the times here recently. Yes, a list of all the times that it's been timestamped by leaders in the Pac-12. So first week it was in December. Okay, in December 22nd, George Kliavkov says the deal is coming in early 2023. Well, obviously that did not happen. The Pac-12 put out its unity statement on February 13th, in which they said they look forward to consummating the deal in the very near future. That was February. Kirk Schulz on February 22nd gave mid-March as a date when he expected the deal to be done. There's another comment here from the next day that said within the next couple or 3 weeks. Then there was Canzano, who quoted a well-placed source on March 3rd as beating the Big 12's dollars a layup. Then there was a president that spoke on the 14th of March that said it was in the final stages. Robert Robbins from Arizona said on the 15th of March that it was coming in the next couple of weeks. Robert Robbins on the 16th of March said the deadline was going to be April 15th and that the number would be 50 plus. We have another comment from March 20th that said ways to go. The 30th, nothing imminent. May 9th, done, but for optics. That's right. So Kirk Schulz, just over a month ago on May 9th, said that the deal would probably be done, but they're worried about the optics. The partners were worried about the optics when they're making massive cuts and then signing a multi-million-dollar deal. We're over a month since those comments came. And then Kirk Schulz said next few weeks to a month on May 16th, and now is saying 2 weeks here as of right now as we sit on June 11th. I guess in fairness to Schulz, those comments would have been made a couple of days ago. So that's the danger, and yet we have Kirk Schulz out here doing it once again, saying that Pac-12 revenue deal is probably coming in the next 2 weeks. He was then pushed by the board on his level of confidence with this, and he said it was a 7 out of 10. So his level of confidence was a 7 out of 10. I don't know. mean, at this point, Kirk Schultz has been one of the guys that has spoken the most in terms of giving timestamps and just being on the record about all of this, most of which has obviously not come to fruition and been wrong. So I am levying a decent amount of skepticism with this. It's just you're at the point now where you're going to have to prove it to me. I will not believe it until I see it. Ross Dellinger tweeted this in response to Kirk Schultz saying it was only 2 weeks away. Ross Dellinger from SI. So again, somebody who at one point in time was kind of pushing back on the Dennis Dodds of the world in this whole saga. Ross Dellinger from Sports Illustrated says, latest timeline of a media rights deal announced by a Pac-12 official in the next 2 weeks. Keep in mind that this is probably the dozenth time in the last 8 months that a Pac-12 leader has suggested a timeline for their media deal. None of them have come to fruition. So it is not just us in Big 12 country who are skeptical of this at this point in time. It is not just 12 and on, right? In the words of the Pac-12 propaganda machine, it's not just 12 and on that has a lot of skepticism about these timestamps being put on it and thinking that it would actually be close here at this point in time. Nope. That's Ross Dellinger, man, from Sports Illustrated, one of the most respected college football reporters that is out there, and a guy that at one point seemed to be more on the side of like pushing back against the Dennis Dodd reports that were coming out there that were very much more on the pro Big 12 side. Okay. So just laying it all out there for everybody in Pac-12 country to realize here who it is that is saying that and having that same level of skepticism. The other comment that I thought was very interesting from Kirk Schultz, and it's a little bit more off topic here, but he had a quote that was pulled out of there that said, quote, "We can't build a budget over numbers that have no basis in reality. And that's what got us here," which I found very interesting. Now, I think a lot of that, like Washington State has, it's a little more multi-layered problem with the finances going on there right now. On top of that, you have like the Comcast thing with the Pac-12 where they're going to have to pay an extra $70 million for that. There have been a lot of complicating factors there that have made their financial situation worse. But man, if you're talking about numbers that have no basis in reality, we're thinking back, at least I think immediately back to some of the reporting early on that suggested that George Kliavkoff just massively overvalued this thing and probably overvalued the media rights deal to his presidents and got everybody thinking, hey, the budget numbers can be bigger. The budget numbers can be X, when really what's going to happen is Y, and Y is smaller than X. And even with that, we've seen George Kliavkoff publicly say his league is going to catch up to the Big Ten and the SEC financially, which we know is just a ridiculous and asinine statement, which makes it more believable that he would have set the bar too high initially for all of his constituents here, in this case, being all of the presidents and athletic directors across the conference. So those were the comments of Kirk Schultz, partially, not reading you everything that came out of that, but partially that Jon Wilner would then react to. So Robert Robbins also has come out and spoken some recently here for Arizona. Robert Robbins, the president of Arizona, has done the same thing he had done before, which is say, quite literally, show me the money. We talked about that on the last show, right? The show me the money. It's going to depend on our financial situation, was the quote when he was asked about what conference they're going to be in the future. I am paraphrasing with that one, but that is in essence what he said. Now, at the same time, adding, hey, I feel confident we're going to be in the Pac-12 and get it done. It's been the same message. We basically have Robert Robbins say the same things that he has been saying, which is, we're confident that we're going to get a deal. We want to be in the Pac-12, but it depends on our finances and what this deal is going to be as to where we will be. We have to make the decisions that is best for the University of Arizona. Okay, so now I'm going to pick up with the Jon Wilner article. He says, Robbins offered insights during Arizona's summit on the future of college sports in Washington, D.C., with two specific comments drawing our interest. Asked about Arizona's future conference affiliation, Robbins said, depends on what our financial deal is. Asked about the future of the Pac-12, he said, my prediction is we are all going to stay together. So Wilner says, why might he believe that? Well, he could be taking a wild guess, or maybe he's aware of the all-important financial piece and is being coy. Clearly, the presidents have not been presented with a formal written contract offer, but that doesn't mean they're flying blind on the valuation. There is room for nuance in negotiating deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. A couple of things on that. So Wilner is basically suggesting here that even if there has not been an official contract presented to these guys with the official numbers, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't still have a good idea of what the numbers are going to be financially with this. Now, one, a part of this is because Pete Thamel came out with a tweet and said a clarification on the Pac-12 TV contract number projections that came out of Washington State's board meeting today. WSU officials still have not seen the potential TV contract numbers. the officials were explaining to their board about why they were not projecting a budget past 2025, but there's still no projected hard numbers. So Wilner is kind of riffing off of that, saying, okay, fine, there's not an official set of numbers out there that they've seen, but they're not flying totally blind here. They're getting fed some idea of what the numbers are going to be. That is Wilner's argument here. And he even had kind of a snarky tweet responding to somebody where he said, I don't know where the final valuation will land, and I don't know exactly what has been shared with the schools, but does anyone think after 11 months of negotiations and verbally agreeing to a grant of rights that they're flying blind on the dollars? Come on, people. I would say two things to that. I would say, one, no, do I think that they are totally flying blind and have absolutely no idea? No, I don't believe that to be true. But do I believe that they're getting accurate information and that they should be trusted, even if they are getting some level of idea of what these numbers are going to be? I would say hell to the no, my friend, Mr. Wilner, lest we forget the whole list that I just rattled off of every time a timeline has been given and it's been incorrect and it has not come to fruition. They have clearly been led astray before, is the point, by George Kliavkoff and those at the top. Like there is absolutely no denying that. I mean, that is a fact now. With how many times this has come and gone with them giving deadlines and it not happening, clearly they have been fed incorrect information from the top. Because yes, I'm sure they are getting some level of info from George Kliavkoff. I'm sure he is at least talking to them while he's not talking publicly, but it has gotten them into hot water before. So why should we just all of a sudden believe that the dollars are correct there? And then again, I will harken back to, it seems very clear that from the beginning, this was overhyped. George Kliavkoff overvalued what his conference was going to be worth on the open market here with these TV numbers. And even if you're going to say, I mean, the Pac-12 narrative for a long time was very hard. They were very, very much pushing, and Wilner was a big part of this. Well, the Big 12 undercut things. When the Big 12 took $32 million, that killed the Pac-12 because then that set like a precedent for what their deal was going to be, which I still think is a pretty dumb and ridiculous assertion. But that was the narrative for a long time, which would suggest that the Pac-12 thought they were getting more than that, which was foolish and incorrect. So that has happened before. They've even been wrong on the dollars before, right? Like, what reason do we have to just blindly say, yeah, we should just let that go unchecked and say, hey, Kirk Schultz knows what he's talking about. These guys aren't flying blind. They're getting correct information from the top. BS, man. BS. There is reason to be very skeptical of that. It may still be that this is the time, 12th time's the charm. After crying about a deal coming soon, that this actually happens. But there is absolutely more than enough reason to be skeptical about all of it, and more than enough reason to be skeptical about whether these numbers are correct or if they're feeling like they're getting good numbers right now. It's the thing I would throw this into if we're talking about Robbins's comments here and saying, well, look, he's not flying blind when he says he thinks they're going to stick together. He's getting fed numbers that he thinks. Robert Robbins has to say that publicly. You still, to be a decent enough partner, you can't just go out and say, well, hey, yeah, my prediction is we'll probably wind up in the Big 12. I don't have confidence in Kliavkoff to get this deal done. You're not going to say that. You can't say that. So if we're going to approach this with any level of reality with how these things work, yes, there are plenty of reasons to believe that this could just be the same cycle happening over again for the Pac-12. Now, by the same token, it could also be that Jon Wilner has some information here. He is very plugged in. He was the guy to report USC, UCLA. He clearly is going to be getting information from somebody. And again, maybe this will be the time that it is actually correct. And that is the way that he's choosing to handle it here. Perhaps, but he has been wrong. He has moved goalposts. The presidents have been wrong. The presidents have moved goalposts. This has all happened many times throughout this process. So there is ample reason to be skeptical of it. Anyway, as far as the rest of the article goes, Wilner says, so just for a moment, let's step back from the weeds of realignment rumors and take a broader view. The Pac-12 has been at this for 11 months since the president's authorized Kliavkoff to explore a new media rights deal in the wake of USC and UCLA opting to join the Big Ten. The presidents have verbally agreed to a grant of rights deal, a crucial step in the process. It binds the school's media revenue to the conference. They would have never taken that step if Kliavkoff were still trying to rustle up bids from potential partners. That's an I guess I will have to defer to Wilner on that. Wilner is saying that the verbal grant of rights agreement would never have happened if Kliavkoff were still trying to rustle up bids from potential partners. The idea there being like they wouldn't get to that step unless they had a deal that they were just like dotting the I's and crossing the T's is the way that you would take that. But even then, we've had some dispute on that. Robert Robbins at Arizona said that he was not aware of any verbal agreement for the grant of rights, that there had been anything decided with that. So there's even conflicting information between Wilner and the president speaking there. And we're treating the rest of the article like as if the president's word is gospel here. So if we're doing that, then we can't just assert that that is totally official, that there's some verbal agreement for the grant of rights in place, which was first reported by John Canzano, as is pointed out by Wilner here in the article. There's just a lot of inconsistencies with what is happening here. So Wilner says, our conclusion, of course, the Pac-12 has a sense for the financial piece, for the length of the media contract, for the annual valuation, for the network's partners, and Kliavkov assuredly has passed that information along to the presidents, at least in general form. Okay, I mean, I'm sure he's passing along some info, but again, we have a chronicled history here of that info being incorrect and leading Pac-12 leaders astray. So that's just the impasse that we're at here. Again, I respect Wilner. I respect his work. He's been much better than others. I will just say others in this process from Pac-12 country. But I'm disagreeing a little bit on this and acknowledging that he may have the inside info that this time, the 12th time is going to be the charm. But I'm at odds with him a little bit on this and the credibility, kind of the benefit of the doubt that he's really granting the Pac-12. That's really what it is. I don't think the Pac-12 has earned that benefit of the doubt. Kliavkov can be talking to these guys, but if he's just telling them BS and he's telling them things that aren't true or that don't come true, like has seemingly happened before, then it doesn't really matter if he is actually having conversations with them and talking to them. But that's your Pac-12 perspective right now, where they seem to be sensing that something is close and that there is some real legitimate momentum here. And if nothing else, I mean, I will give the Pac-12 this, like the Colorado smoke, at least for the time being, has died down just a little bit. The board meeting on Friday that there was a lot of questioning about has been canceled, did not happen for Colorado at that point in time. So this is at least something that's a little better coming out here from Jon Wilner. All right, let me hop back into some donations here real quick. Click the $ below the chat box where it says say something if you want to be a part of the show tonight. That is the way to do that. It's a way to make your voice heard, get your question or comment on the show, and support the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 content on a weekly basis here on the channel. Also, if you like the video, I would much appreciate that. Totally free. Just like the video. Another easy way to support the channel. All right, David says, and David, I appreciate you being here. Thank you, my friend, David Brand. David says, great work, John. Enjoy your content every week, and it's a great day to be a Wildcat, EMAW. Indeed it is, David. K-State landed a huge one out of the portal, arguably the best guy left in the portal, Arthur Kaluma from Creighton. Very excited about that guy who was invited to the NBA Combine this past offseason. K-State is not going anywhere, folks. Jerome Tang is not going anywhere. Michael, appreciate you popping in again. Michael says, can't build a budget. More like can't budget. Hashtag Washington. Yeah, the state of Washington, man, they're down bad right now. Washington State in some financial hot water, and so is Washington. And it is interesting. I will, if we get to it today, I will read you a little bit from the Seattle paper and the Washington beat writer there who is talking about the financial struggles that Washington is having right now. Just a much different tone there than like Canzano, Wilner when talking about the Pac-12. And this obviously is from maybe the best brand left in the Pac-12, because there has been some talk of that here recently, that Washington has more value even than Oregon. So Washington's in a position of power over there, but it's not as rosy of an outlook. Not a, hey, everything's fine sort of a vibe like we just got in the piece that I read from Wilner there about what's happening in the Pac-12 right now. Matthew, what's up, Matthew? Appreciate you being here. Matthew Hunsacker in the house as always. Thank you for your donation and your support of the channel. Matthew says, feels like another stall tactic. 7 out of 10 is a good hope, but far from a firm deal, and still many other power players remaining silent. Presidents seeking money more than linear coverage, too many bills to pay. You know, that's an interesting point that you bring up there, because we are now seeing, I think we all kind of knew that there were a lot of financial pressures going on here, but we're now seeing that a little more just out in the open. It's just more exposed with the board meeting that Washington State had, and now what's going on with Washington and their numbers being out there too. You're just like tangibly seeing just how difficult of a financial situation it is for these schools at the moment. And so that makes you wonder if there is more of a willingness to forego some of the visibility in favor of money. Now, this would just be pure speculation. I don't know who actually is involved here. I mean, I would think you're probably still looking at like Apple and the CW as maybe the two leading targets here for who would be in negotiations for all of this right now. But maybe there is more of a willingness with the pressure and people's feet being held to the fire right now with the money to just be like, look, guys, we just got to get something. We got to get something in here. We got to maximize the money because I've got budget concerns in the short term. It is more difficult to look at the health of the long-term thing if you have these prevailing immediate needs financially. So I do think that's an interesting point that you bring up there. And your first point, just a general point, feels like another stall tactic. I mean, yeah, we have plenty of reason to believe because we've seen about every stall tactic in the book out of the Pac-12 so far, even to the point where Kirk Schultz himself said, this partner's just worried about optics because they had layoffs, and that was a month ago. And we still haven't seen anything come out of this. So we've seen any and every stall tactic coming out of the Pac-12 so far. Our skepticism is earned. It is very much earned in this scenario. So appreciate you weighing in there, Matthew. How about this? Have we had group poop in here before? Have we had group poop? I like it. Group poop. Getting creative with the names. Thank you for your support, group poop. I have always said there's nothing better than, anyway. Bohlsi appreciation post from group poop here. Bohlsi appreciation post. Made the moves to get the schools that actually saved the conference. All Brett has given us so far are trying to get non-football schools and the Wabash dog. Ooh, all right. So that's a fire take. We've got a Bob Bohlsi supporter that's not super on board with what Brett Yormark is doing right now. You are omitting group poop, a massive accomplishment for Brett Yormark, which was the TV contract that has put the Pac-12 in such a precarious spot. The Big 12 had the foresight through Endeavor, all hail Lord Karen, and obviously themselves, to see that the economic financial situation in the TV world and the streaming rights world was going to be heading to a more negative place. So it was important to just act fast, get a deal done, get your visibility and get your stability and get that all locked up and make life tougher on the Pac-12. And that's exactly what has happened here. So in the same way that I will totally agree with the Bob Bohlsi appreciation post, in the same way that Bob Bohlsi acted very quickly in getting the 4 new schools to come in here when he needed to in 2021, you also have to give Brett Yormark credit for acting as swiftly as he did to make sure that he got the TV deal locked down. Because the dynamics of all of this would look so much different if that had not happened. One, because of inventory, or just available slots out there for ESPN and Fox, with them not having the Big 12 locked up, and then them still theoretically being first in line, and the financial ramifications of everything that's been happening. It's just the dynamics between Big 12 and Pac-12 would be a lot different if the Big 12 didn't have this stability already locked up here. So that was a huge move. It was a huge move from Yormark. I will just say that. I think you need to give Yormark a little bit more credit. I'm not saying that you have to love everything he does. I'm not saying that you have to be as on board with Yormark as I am. And there are a lot of people who, I would say kind of the more old school, traditionalist sort of crowd seems to not be as on board with Yormark and some of the innovative things that he is trying. I'm on the very opposite side of that pendulum. I love the innovative things he's trying because I think you need to do that. I think you need to go attack the SEC and Big Ten that way. Not that you're really even attacking them, but just you're not going to win playing the same game that they're playing. You're going to have to take chances and do some more creative sorts of things. But I'm not telling you that you have to love the idea of UConn or Gonzaga. I can't make you love that. You can have you're entitled to your own opinion as far as that goes. But I will say, Bob Bohlsi appreciation post, I think he probably did not get enough credit. I think the fact that he moved as swiftly as he did to get the 4 schools he did has aged very well. And in general, yes, he did lose Texas and Oklahoma. I don't know that anybody was really going to prevent that, even if he had known before it actually happened. But I think Bob Bohlsi generally did a pretty good job as the conference commissioner. Popping forward here past group poop, we are on to Grand Dan. We've got some names that are really rolling off the tongue here tonight, but Grand Dan, no, I've seen you in here before. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your support again, as always, my friend. Grand Dan says, does Wilner seem too dependent on athletic department sources instead of the president's office where the decision will be made? I don't know. I don't know that I know enough to. I wouldn't profess to have any real clue who Jon Wilner's sources are. I mean, I think Jon Wilner is also very well sourced within like the Pac-12 HQ, like Pac-12 offices themselves. Um, and he's like that's a veteran journalist, a guy that's been around and been doing it for a long time. So I just don't. I think it would be unfair of me. I guess I'll put it that way, Grandin. I think it would be unfair of me to speculate on his sources and what he's using and what he's not. I just think it comes down to a fairly natural bias. And I know that this, for a journalist would be like nails on a chalkboard, and he wouldn't like me saying this. I'm not really meaning it as any kind of slight or anything like that. I think even a journalist that is abiding by like journalistic standards can still have some inherent like just biases or like he knows theoretically the people in these offices and athletic departments and where his sources would be. You're going to be like more inclined with a personal relationship there to believe them, give them the benefit of the doubt in these sorts of situations, because they're the people that you really know in all of this. So you're going to be less skeptical of that than you would be just stuff happening in Big 12 country where you haven't been like boots on the ground sort of reporter, much like it's reversed here for all of us that are in Big 12 country as opposed to Pac 12 country. So, there's probably some of that. Somebody that's around it, you're going to be inherently, I think, a little more apt to give benefit of the doubt there. It's kind of like even the same way like officials in games. You can say, obviously, they're supposed to be totally unbiased, but I think there is almost inherent, like just subconsciously, there's going to be some bias sometimes to like, man, if I make this call, this whole crowd is going to hate me and be booing all over the place. And I know you're supposed to get over that. And not, that's another thing like refs, that would be nails on a chalkboard to them. But I think it happens sometimes that just like your subconscious reaction is going to be almost a side with the home crowd sometimes within some of that. I think it would be a similar sort of principle applying here. At least that is just my opinion and the way that I am seeing it. Neilio, what's up, Neilio? Always love having you here. Thank you for your support. And thank you for your comments here. Neilio, just a great guy as always. Says, great show, John. Always enjoy your show and the great content you provide us. #GoCats. Thank you for that, Neilio. And I hope you are basking in the glow of landing a big-time transfer out of Creighton today, which is what K-State men's basketball did. Okay, if you guys want to hop in like they did on the show, make your voice heard, get your question or comment on tonight, support the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 content on a week in, week out basis, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you can do that. Also, if you'd like the video, I would really appreciate it. Help pump that algo. Leave a comment on the video in the comment section before, during, or after, and you can also support on Venmo. It is John-Kurtz-4 in order to do that. So here's a little bit more on Washington State. I did not actually finish the Jon Wilner article. He said the Cougars offered only projections for Pac-12 media revenue starting in the 2025 fiscal year, the first of the next media rights contract cycle. And that makes sense because the Pac-12 doesn't have a signed media deal, and Schultz was undoubtedly weary of providing hard and fast budget numbers to the board before the signed contract. But Schultz also offered this comment about media revenue. Quote, at least the projections Pat Chun and I, the athletic director, at least the projections the athletic director and I and others have seen, I'm not sure that it will be a lot larger than we saw in the past, and it shouldn't be smaller than in the past. It may be fairly flat. So Schultz is saying that he would expect the number here with the deal to be fairly similar to what they have right now. And as Jon Wilner points out, if true, that would place the conference within range of the Big 12's average annual valuation of $31.66 million per school year, which has been the expectation all along. So we're at the same place here. If we are to take exact same thing we just did with the whole first part of this deal on the 2 weeks thing and getting close, and yeah, they have some idea about the financials. If we take this comment at face value and we give them the benefit of the doubt and we believe what's being said from Pac-12 country here, at least the projections we've seen, I'm not sure it will be a lot larger than we saw in the past, and it shouldn't be smaller. It may be fairly flat. They are saying that it would be very similar to the Big 12's number, very similar to the number the Pac-12 has now. That would be an outcome that likely keeps the league together. I think that's an outcome that likely keeps the league together if we believe that and take it at face value. I am going to again say we have plenty of reason to be skeptical of Schultz and wherever he might be getting his information from, wherever these numbers might be actually coming from. We have reason to be skeptical until we actually see something signed. And that is going to be my opinion there. Whereas Wilner takes it and says, well, hey, if true, it's what the expectation has been all along. It'll be close to what the Big 12 is, and everybody will stay together. He goes on to say, maybe the Big 12 ends up with a slightly higher valuation. Maybe the Pac 12 does. Either way, the conferences are more similar than different, and neither is anything like the Big 10 and the SEC. Agreed. Agreed. That's not a statement that you can really disagree with. But there is room for nuance. As a wise man once said, there is room for nuance, and there is still a considerable difference between the Big 12 and the Pac 12 right now in the positions that they are in. So to act like they are totally similar is probably a little bit off. But no, I suppose you can't really argue with the statement that he makes there. I would also say a not wise man once said that his conference was going to catch up to both the Big 10 and the SEC financially. So Jon Wilner may need to relay that message to George Kliavkov that the Pac-12 is more similar to the Big 12 than it is the Big 10 or the SEC, because that does not seem to have resonated all the way up at the top. From the article, details remain sparse. The negotiations are complicated, and the Pac-12 has maintained an extremely tight circle. Only a handful of executives are versed in the specifics. We don't know exactly what Kliavkov has shared with the presidents. Has he given them a valuation range or specific dollar amounts? Has he presented them with visuals or just relayed the numbers verbally? Has he accepted final bids, or are they due sometime this summer? He points out also university presidents speak in a different language, whether they're answering questions from the media or presenting to their boards. The words and phrases they choose don't always translate well to the vernacular used on the front lines of college athletics. But if we combine Robin's outlook for the Pac-12's future with Schultz's revenue projections and the verbal agreement on the grant of rights contract, it's reasonable to conclude that the process is nearing an end, that Kliavkov has seen the numbers, that he has given the presidents enough details to give them confidence in the financials, and that the central decision makers in this saga expect to stay together and agree to a media deal that will last the rest of the decade. Is the Pac-12's future secure? Nope, not yet. This is realignment after all, and the Pac-12 remains without a signed media rights contract. Perhaps the final bids are lower than expected. Perhaps one of the presidents panics and flees to the Big 12, sparking an exodus. Perhaps an unforeseen event intervenes at the last minute and delays the process by many more months or detonates the conference altogether. Any outcome is possible. No scenario should be dismissed, but the latest clues suggest a quiet optimism and approaching resolution. That's a really good job of hedging bets. It's a really good job of hedging bets. And look, I do it too. I just said, look, I disagree with his take on a lot of that and think there's a lot more reason for skepticism that he is letting on there. But I also said, like, he could be right. This could be the time, 12th time being a charm, that they've actually nailed all this and have it done. So we're all kind of hedging our bets here while asserting what our real opinion is. And it's at odds. It is at odds right now, really, what I think and what Pac-12 country thinks of what is going on right now. All right, couple more donations to get to here. Again, if you want to be a part of the show, make your voice heard, leave a question or comment, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something to do that. Get your voice heard, get your question or comment on the show, control the content, and support the work I'm doing here on the channel. Sergeant Pickles, what up, Sergeant Pickles? Washington fan here in the house. Sergeant Pickles says people will make fun, but the Pac will be okay for the near future. Won't be a great number, but I think closer to Big 12 than many are expecting. Go Dogs. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with a ton of that. Like I've said, the Colorado smoke had moved me back to like 50-50. I would say right now, I don't love doing this. And it's kind of like Wilner and his, point spread here where it moves sometimes. I don't know. Maybe I'm back to like 40-60 or 45-55 that the Big 12 does pull a member or two from the Pac-12. But I've never been somebody that thought it was overwhelmingly likely for a long time. I told you guys I was more at like 30-70. So I can get behind that. And I think okay number, close to the Big 12, keeping the entire league together is very, very much still on the table, and probably still the slight by a slight margin. I would say probably still the most likely outcome here for the Pac-12. So I don't really disagree too much with that, Sergeant Pickles. And I would also, I guess the one thing I might quibble with a little bit there is saying won't be a great number, but I think closer to the Big 12 than many are expecting. Are many people really expecting it to be significantly lower than the Big 12? Maybe I'm not reading the chat closely enough here, but I feel like people that are like realistic about this and not just leaning so far into their fandom that they're saying like the Pac-12, would be pulling like $17 million a year, some crazy low number like that. I feel like most people think that it's going to be reasonably close to the Big 12, but probably still in a gray enough area where it's going to lead to like a tough decision from an Arizona and or a Colorado. McMuffin, what's up, McMuffin? McMuffin says, well, McMuffin, first of all, thank you. But McMuffin shares a sentiment that I think is shared by a lot of people, which is, I really hope this is over soon. I also hope SMU doesn't get a Pac-12 invite. I mean, I hope it's over soon too. I really do. I understand the realities of this and how this gives me content to come on here and talk to you about every day, but it is exhausting, and we just do the same thing over and over again. We have some little bit of a story or some little bit of information. Something gets reported one way, and everybody runs to one side to frame it how it fits their narrative, and run to the other side. And everything I'm saying about how Wilner and I are seeing a little bit differently here with the level of skepticism being levied. We're just doing the same thing over and over again and kind of chasing our tail and going in circles about all that until something actually happens. So I cannot really disagree with you too much there. As far as SMU goes, I mean, frankly, I just don't really care. I don't think SMU is moving the needle in the Pac-12 one way or the other. No offense to SMU. I don't do this specifically just to like take a shot at you. It's just my opinion. I don't think SMU is really doing much one way or the other. SMU fans have been at least some a little annoying on Twitter, but again, I get it because you're potentially finally getting the call to the big leagues. You want to see the Pac-12 stand. You don't want to see that opportunity crumble for you. So like, I get it. I understand. Acadian. I try to just pronounce it every single way so that I could get it at least once, but thank you for being here. Thank you for the support and the donation. I appreciate you. Says, even if the Pac-12 money is similar, the non-Oregon Washington schools are putting themselves in a destabilized position after 3 to 5 years. Why not control your own destiny if you have options? I think there is some truth to what you're saying there, because you're kicking the can down the road in essence here for however long that grant of rights is going to be if you do sign on with the Pac-12. But the stuff that I think probably outweighs the like, hey, you would have a more stable future in the Big 12. You would feel better about that conference having the opportunity to exist is just the mere fact that it would be a pain. I mean, you're going to have to pay more to send your Olympic sports all over the place if you're going to be in the Big 12 as opposed to the Pac-12. You're leaving behind all this tradition. You're leaving behind what is easy and what makes more sense. I think we would all agree conferences should make sense geographically, and the way that we kind of had everything before it started getting totally foobarred here was a better way to do it. So you'd rather be with all of your peers regionally than having to make that move. And it kind of goes back to the analogy that I've used many times before. Like, moving sucks. Like, think about just moving right now. Okay, you might be in a little more stable position, slightly better house, something like that. But like, do you want to go move if you don't have to? Like, no, nobody wants to go through the process of moving and doing all of that. Like, it's a pain. So I think that probably outweighs what you're talking about there, but maybe not. And maybe that is what ultimately the decision winds up being for like an Arizona or Colorado. I think it would have to be that combined with more legitimate proof that you would be financially better off, like fairly significantly financially better off there. I think that's all a part of the equation, but I think it's a good point. It's a valid point that you bring up. I do. I think that's a decent question. Okay, a little more into the Pac-12 stuff here. And again, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something if you want to get something in here. We got about 15 minutes left here in the show tonight. So your 15-minute warning, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something if you want to get something in before we depart. But here is Jon Wilner commenting on the Colorado rumors. He took a question in his mailbag. Based on public comments in your podcast, I firmly believe the Pac-12's media deal is all but signed. So is the Colorado smoke coming from Colorado because the school wants to leverage something, or is it more from the Big 12? This is what Wilner said. He said 2 things can be equally true, and in the hotline's opinion, are equally true. Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State much prefer to remain in the Pac-12. The 4 schools must perform their due diligence and keep their options open in case Commissioner George Kliavkoff presents an untenable media rights deal. We have no doubt the Buffaloes have met with Big 12 representatives. In that regard, the media narrative is more than smoke. How about that? That's a good quote there from Jon Wilner. In that regard, the media narrative is more than smoke. Somebody go tell Utah Twitter that Jon Wilner said the Colorado media narrative is more than smoke. He does say, but meeting with Big 12 representatives and preferring the Big 12 are two different things. From that standpoint, much of what you hear and read is smoke. I don't know that is anybody, even those that are reporting, like what's actually being reported out there about Colorado, I don't think anybody there is reporting that and saying, and Colorado prefers to be in the Big 12, because if Colorado preferred to be in the Big 12, they'd be there right now. That's nobody really that is legitimately reporting things thinks that. So I don't know. That rubs me a little bit the wrong way, but I mean, he is correct. Like they are definitely two different things. Chancellor Phil DiStefano said earlier this spring that he was content to wait for Kliavkoff to present the schools with an offer. We have no reason to believe his view has changed. If the offer is reasonable, the Buffaloes will remain in the conference. If not, they'll leave. And that's true for other schools as well. The hotline continues to expect a reasonable offer. That said, nothing is certain until the schools sign on the bottom line. See, the next part of the mailbag here. Yeah, okay. All right. This was another thing I took a little bit of issue with. The question was, I'm late to the party, but what are the advantages of negotiating a media rights agreement after the other Power 5 leagues have already done so? And remember, for so long, it was pushed as a huge positive that like the Pac-12 was going to be the next coming to market. The Pac-12 was going to be like the league that's up in the spotlight. This is their time to shine. And so the question is basically being asked, like, why is that an advantage that they are the only league that is out there now? And Wilner says Kliavkoff believes the Pac-12 status as the only Power 5 conference with football inventory available between now and the 2030s has tilted the supply-demand calculation in his favor. We know the demand for live sports continues to soar, and college football is one of the most popular sports. The Pac-12 has several of the nation's biggest media markets and a valuable broadcast window that no other conference can fill on a weekly basis. Is Kliavkoff's assessment correct? We should know soon. Look, that's the very rosy picture of it. The other is like ESPN's going through layoffs, this total like free-flowing waterfall of money to live sports. The spigot has been shut off in a lot of places. They're having to be more selective. There is a ton of competition with other major entities coming up for deals here soon that are going to take up inventory. And a lot of these channels are more concerned with that than they would be Pac-12 football. So yeah, I just laugh a little bit here that like that for so long was held up as this big positive. Now it's just clear that the math, the calculus on all of this has definitely changed. So I don't know. I mean, that's as rosy a picture as you could possibly paint for the situation that they're in. But I think most reasonable people would look at it and say, no, it's actually maybe that part specifically isn't necessarily a disadvantage that they're the only ones out there. But the totality of the picture that they're in right now, they're at a major disadvantage compared to their peers. At least the Big 12 is one of their peers. The ACC certainly has plenty of their problems as well, being locked into that crappy deal that they are for as long as they are. This is an important piece. This is an important piece, guys. Jon Wilner actually set a deadline out here. Okay, so here was the Jon Wilner deadline for when the Pac-12 media deal needs to get done. Someone asked if you had to guess when the Pac-12 gets the media deal done, when is it? He says that depends on how you define done, because the hotline believes there's a distinct possibility the conference finalizes the framework of a deal well before it announces the deal. But if you want a deadline for everything, I'd offer July 21st. So there's another date, July 21st, it's about 40 days from right now. July 21st, the date of the Pac-12's preseason media showcase in Las Vegas. The event is intended to promote the teams, coaches, and players ahead of the most anticipated season in memory. If there's no media deal in place, the existential crisis will dominate the coverage. Well, he's not wrong about that. The existential crisis would definitely dominate the coverage. It's dominating the coverage right now because, I mean, he's right. Like on the field, it should be a very highly anticipated season in the Pac-12, but there's not a lot of talk about that right now because they're just taking bullet after bullet from crappy media stories and bad media cycles that they've dealt with for a very long time here. So I understand his logic in getting there. I would still say, like, now you're another guy that has timestamped something that's a little dicey and a little dangerous. But with all the Colorado smoke, I would say it would certainly, yes, behoove them to get something done by late July. It would. But the other important piece of that is that breezes right on past the San Diego State deadline, which is June 30th. And that is that the exit fee skyrockets for San Diego State if they were going to be in there in time to come right in after USC and UCLA leave in 2024. Their exit fee just goes way higher if you don't get all that figured out by June 30th. So if they're not going to have a deal by June 30th, then you're talking about like maybe waiting an extra year for San Diego State, or maybe then San Diego State becomes more of a target or possibility for the Big 12. So there is still some inherent danger in that, even if that is going to be the deadline left there. Anyway, 10-minute warning here for you guys. 10-minute warning. If you want to get something in, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you can weigh in, make your voice heard, and at the same time support the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 and conference realignment content on a regular basis. Also, if you could please like the video, I would appreciate that. Like the video, totally free, one click. Leave a comment in the comment section of the video. All that stuff helps with the algorithm. I appreciate it immensely. Those of you guys who do that. Let's finish up here by breaking away from the Pac-12 a little bit. Let's talk Greg Sankey and Brett Yormark. Greg Sankey had a couple of comments that really made me roll my eyes. And I don't really have huge issues with Greg Sankey, but seeing him take some of the shots that he did here, or just one of them is a shot, another is just something that does not come across as very self-aware for Greg Sankey and his position in everything that he has done with conference realignment. On Brett Yormark, Greg Sankey said, so this tweet says, Sankey going after the Big 12's Brett Yormark on this panel, quote, I think the old way would not be to get to a microphone saying, I'm going here, I'm going there. So, okay, literally had to roll my eyes at that. What he is saying there is like Brett Yormark has been clear saying like, we want to get in that extra time zone. We want to be out west. Brett Yormark has made it very clear what his intentions are and wants to expand the league and wants to make it like a more nationwide conference, nationwide sort of brand. He has not shied away from that. He has definitely said that's happening. Okay, if you want to say that's not the old way to do it, yeah, you're right. But like none of this is the old way to do it. Like we have thrown decorum, we have thrown tradition, we've thrown all that bleep out the window long ago. And the SEC has been a huge part of that. I mean, let's leave the Sankey part out of it. Just go back to the SEC 10 years ago, 13 years ago, when they get involved with like Missouri and Texas A&M, plucking schools there. And then Greg Sankey's part in it was that he kicked off this latest round of craziness by taking Texas and Oklahoma under, cloak and dagger. Shout out to my guy, Greg, but utilizing the cloak and dagger to go ahead and do that. Like, what are you doing? You're going to throw other commissioners under the bus for what they're trying to do, like expansion. Like Yormark and the Big 12 are doing this and having to do this because of your stealthy ass coming in and taking their two biggest brands. Like, so I just tone deaf. I mean, to me, that's just very tone deaf. The problem is like Sankey's in a position of power. It's the SEC. What are you going to do? I mean, he can pretty much just rattle off whatever it is that he wants to about all this. And you can't say much because what are you going to do? I mean, the SEC is just in the power position no matter what. Here's another one, though. Greg Sankey here in D.C. says he told his league presidents last week at meetings that he hopes there is no more conference realignment this cycle. Quote, I hope everybody stays where they are. I welcome everybody to remain and be happy. I guess unless that's sort of some like, stand down sort of tweet to the Miami, Florida states of the world that would be thirsting to get into the SEC. It's another eye-rollable sort of comment from Sankey here. Like, oh, hey, I hope we don't need any more of this realignment. This has been bad and crazy for the game, whatever. We don't just everybody. I hope everybody stays put. Hope everybody stays put here. Like, come on, dude. You're the guy that really put all this, strapped all this, the realignment thing to a rocket ship and sent it all exploding in July of 2021 with what was happening with Oklahoma and Texas. You have no right to say that to anybody. But again, I get it. He's just going to say it. He's Greg Sankey. What are you going to do? Very annoying. I would just say those comments, very, very annoying. And Yormark, I continue back to the Yormark comments. It's interesting to me that he takes shots like that. I mean, like, I don't remember if it was Wilner. I think it maybe was Wilner, who at one point that was just calling out Yormark for his comments once again, talking about where they wanted to go and what time zone they wanted to be in when, you have Kliavkov with his comments about, hey, we're not sure if we're done shopping there yet or not, speaking directly about a league. There have been other commissioners doing this too. And yet Yormark, who's really pretty soft spoken, like, yeah, he's bold. And yeah, he has said like, hey, our goal is to be a nationwide brand and we want to get into that time zone. He's not been crazy over the top, like used car salesman sort of guy, like he has sometimes been painted out west. It's not really what he's been. He's been much more about like just getting stuff done and just going out and doing things. He has done more interviews and more media than Kliavkov has, but he's also been fairly measured. Like I feel like he's typically very measured when he speaks, and Kliavkov is flying off the handle saying crazy stuff like UCLA is making a financial mistake going to the Big Ten, and the Pac-12 is going to catch up to the Big Ten and the SEC financially at some point. Like he's really been fairly measured. And so to take these shots from other commissioners and other folks in the media, it's a little surprising to me, man. It's a little surprising to me. You don't have to love everything he's done. You don't have to be just a total cheerleader for him, but that felt a bit unfair to me anyway. Felt a bit unfair. Browns and Beers. What's up, Browns and Beers? Appreciate you being here. Browns and Beers says 2 weeks for a Pac-12 media deal is the new 2 weeks to slow the spread. Also, if I can say UConn is in ESPN's backyard, if they added value to a Power 5 conference, they would already be in one. Yeah, I also think the fact that they're in ESPN's backyard is probably a reason that you would be able to get ESPN a little bit more on board with the idea of this. It's probably not going to hurt you with ESPN if you have UConn right there. I understand what you're saying. I think a big piece of why UConn is where they're at is because, I mean, obviously the basketball and the way that's working out with the Big East right now, it's going swimmingly, and UConn has not cared as much or pumped as much resource-wise into football, and understandably so. I get it. Look, UConn's not going to be about any short-term thing. Like the Big 12 is not telling you, hey, UConn right now, as currently constituted, is totally worthy of being a full Power 5, like full-fledged, full revenue member of a Power 5 conference. That's not what the Big 12 taking UConn would be telling you. What the Big 12 taking UConn would be telling you is that they're saying, hey, with eventually an extra like $25 million a year coming in from the conference revenue, they can build a better football program and they can put themselves in position to be a Power 5 athletic department that is worthy of that and that is ready for that. That's the idea there. I don't think you can get as hung up on what they are specifically right now. That's an investment. UConn's an investment. Gonzaga and any of the basketball-only schools would be an investment in the future, looking down the road when you can break the basketball contract away and potentially be getting more money there. It's all about investments and trying to make wise but also fairly risky investments because you have to. The SEC and the Big Ten can play it safe. They can just go with the very legacy stocks. They can just put the money in Apple, Amazon, whatever. Your big blue collar sort of blue collar is the wrong word. What the hell am I looking? I'm missing the term because I know nothing about investing. I'm missing the term there with what the blue chip stocks. You would not be having to deviate from that if you're the Big Ten or the SEC. You can just wait for the Notre Dames of the world. You can wait for maybe like a Florida State of the world, but even then you can be picky because you don't have to take risks. The Big 12 has to take risks. You have to take risks because you're not catching up to them doing it the traditional way. So that's just my pitch there. I'm not really saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I think you need to think of it in a different way if we're going to attack like what the Big 12 would be potentially doing with UConn. Okay, let me squeeze in the Washington story. I know I said I would tell you guys about the Washington financial issues. I like the way this was framed in the article. It was a really good article in the Seattle paper. There are some problems even Michael Penix Jr. can't solve. Despite a redemptive 2022 football season that included an 11-2 record, Washington's athletic department expects a loss of $5.8 million in the financial year of 2023. Even though UW's 93% season ticket retention is a historic high and the Huskies are college football playoff contenders, Washington projects the deficit to expand to $7.8 million in the coming financial year. Whew. All right, so Washington's going to be in the hole $5.8 million in 23, $7.8 million in 24. Like, these are the financial problems facing Pac-12 universities right now. That's Washington. Best brand, arguably, left in the Pac 12. Great football program right now, and a team that's going to be awesome next year, theoretically. And they're looking at, with 93% renewal rate on season tickets, they are looking at being $5 to then almost $8 million in the hole here over the next couple of years. The Pac 12 desperately needs that TV contract to come in and desperately needs those numbers to be good, man. They really do. That was a pretty eye-opening number, especially for a school, again, like Washington, that is in a position of power relative to the rest of that conference. Alpha Cat, what's up, Alpha Cat? Alpha Cat beating the buzzer here before I get out of here. Alpha Cat says, I'm only 60, but the SEC stealing Arkansas from the Southwest Conference is the start of all of this. Yeah, I mean, the SEC is they're a repeat offender here, right? Repeat offender in the conference realignment game. So it's always going to ring a little bit hollow if you're the SEC now and you're going to say, like, hey, maybe we're doing a little bit too much of this realignment thing and people should chill and commissioners should not be so brash. And I mean, I would suggest to you the most brash move in all of this was what Greg Sankey did in taking Texas and Oklahoma. So let's just chill out, watch where we're throwing stones from glass houses. Okay, it's going to wrap it up for me. I got to run, but I appreciate you guys, those of you who popped in here early tonight and helped make it happen. Still a very lively chat tonight. It was great. Did not lose much at all by having to crank that time up a little bit earlier tonight. So I appreciate each and every one of you there. If you could like the video on your way out, I would appreciate that. If you can leave a comment in the comment section of the video on your way out, I would appreciate that as well. Both of those things help me with the YouTube algorithm. I genuinely appreciate all of you guys who do that. Everybody who donated as well. Couldn't do it without your support. I very much appreciate those of you who do that. Let's continue to spread the word on social media, word of mouth, fan groups for your team or of the conference. People that you are friends with who love your school, love the conference, let them know about the channel. Let's continue to grow this thing. You can support me on Venmo as well, John-Kurtz-4, if you would like to do that also. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. I hope you have a wonderful Sunday night, and I will talk to you soon. Take care, guys.